Go ahead and call this meeting to order at 3:04. Did everybody have an opportunity to look over the minutes from June 25th? Are there any edits or omissions that need to be made?
The only thing I saw is Richard Shodor's name is misspelled in the first reference. It's a minor thing.
Okay. I would move to approve the minutes from June 25th with the exception of Richard Shodorf's wrongly spelled name.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right. Not too much on the agenda today, but I know we've got some things to talk about, some questions that we want to ask, but we'll turn it over to Mr. Hendricks now for the golf updates.
Thanks, Eddie. We sent out the rounds report and updates to everybody here in the last couple of weeks. I'm pretty sure everybody's had a chance probably to review those. Our rounds were up year to date about 1% over last year. Our net revenue were down 7% or about $175,000. Our expenditures and encumbrances are down 15%, which is approximately $383,000 from last year, which gives us a net income improvement over last year of $206,700. The month of August, as you can see there on the report, was very good. We were up about 7,000 rounds for the month. We were up $200,000 in revenue, and our expenses were down about $20,000. McDonald seems to be the one that's doing the best right now. We've done very well when we look at being at only up 1% in rounds, considering we were closed for 7 weeks, 2 of the courses early in the year, and 2 courses being closed for 3 weeks. Our memberships continue to be strong. We've got 1,141 memberships that have been sold, with 151 of those being adult, 105 of those are couples, juniors are 74, young adults 162, and seniors are $649. Revenue-wise, like I said, we were up about $200,000 for the month of August, so that was very well compared to the previous years. Our greens fees at all the courses have done well, even without the adjustments to the membership fees. Sim was up about $2,700. Auburn Hills was up $7,900 or $8,000. Mac was up a little over $20,000, and Tex was up $7,700. So the improved conditions at Mac, everybody's coming out and playing, and that's what we had hoped to see was more participation at that golf course following the closure of LW Clapp. Concessions are up for the month also 28%. Mac still led the way there at about 86%, followed by Tex Consolvers being up 32%, Sim being up 14%, and Auburn Hills being up 9%. Cart revenue is strong. I looked at it this morning for the first 8 months of last year. In 2019, we had $622,353 in cart fees. This year, even with the carts being restricted to no carts, and then when we did put carts out with courses closed, we're at $662,008 for the first 8 months. So we're only $345 behind last year's in cart fees, which is great considering the way the year has gone. But in that respect, McDonald is up 83% in cart fees, Tex Consolver is up 48%, Auburn Hills is up 47%, and Sim is up 31%. So we're up 51% in cart fees for the year. The driving range has done well at all 3 golf courses. We're up 174% for the whole system. With compared to last year, we had $12,077 in revenue. This year, we're at $33,084. Auburn Hills was up 107%, and Tex Consolver was up 101% over last year. At our park board meeting in August, Mr. Godard asked about the equipment replacement fund, how much money we had in it. What I sent out to you, or Rowan sent to you here a little while ago, was kind of an update of that for the first 8 months. So I'll refer to that rather than what I referred to yesterday during the park board meeting. The first 8 months in revenue in the equipment replacement fund, we have $51,309 in there. This is one of the questions Mr. Goder asked, was how's that fund doing yesterday in the park board meeting. And in September, our projection would be if we bring in the same amount of money in that fund as we did last year in September, October, November, and December, because that's how finance has done our projections on our the balance of our golf season. We would have a total of about $73,859 in that fund. With November's adding, when we bill that $37 to everybody, that would actually be $39,479 that would come in November. That would put us for year to date of about $113,338. That would be our projection for the year end, what we bring into that fund, which is comparable to 2018, a little bit behind 2019, but not a significant amount. So we think that fund is going to be in good shape at the year end. The other numbers that I sent to you were based on the question Mr. Goder asked yesterday. We were at $2,518,000 at the end of in revenue at the end of August. If we have the same revenues for the month of September, October, November, and December, we should finish the year at about $3,419,162. If we have, based on our expenses at the end of the first 8 months, we were at $2,191,783. If our expenses remain constant for September, October, November, and December, that would put us at $3,357,577 in expenses. So the golf system, based on those projections, should end up with a net profit of about $60,000 for the year. I think that should cover all that information right there. Any other questions?
So, and I see Dale's hand up here. I would just like to ask if anyone would like to speak or ask a question, please raise your hand with the prompt under more actions. Thank you. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Goder. Dale, I think you're on mute there.
You are correct. Sorry. I got questions about the equipment fund and then some of the big numbers as well. On the equipment fund, you showed you have $51,000 you took in the first 8 months. Is that all from a surcharge on the regular green fees?
That is correct.
How does that compare to the previous year, 8 months? How much of the equipment fund came from regular green fees?
Well, considering that last year at the end of August we'd have only had 1 month, it wouldn't be a very good comparison.
Well, you had regular green fee people paying a surcharge all through 2019.
No, the memberships didn't start until August of 2019.
I'm not talking about the membership. I'm talking about regular green fee payers, not the membership. The $51,000 is all from regular green fee surcharges. That's correct?
Yes.
So in 2019, for those first 8 months, how much was raised from regular green fees payers for the equipment fund?
Give me a second here while I log in.
I mean, the total of it, a combination of the surcharge paid by subscribers. We all paid a surcharge when we had our memberships. But the comparable number would be how much did you take in from regular green fees in both
Well,
those?
it's gonna be either, it'll be hard to compare with two courses closed for 7 weeks and two courses being closed for 3 weeks. So that's going to have a significant effect on what that
No,
shows.
I just want the number. I don't know. I know there's variables, but what in 2019, how much money was raised for the equipment fund from regular green fees payers?
I'm in the process of pulling it up on the computer.
Okay.
As we're talking here. So. In 2018, it was $81,000.
81,000 in 18.
Correct.
Okay, so that's 30,000.
Excuse me, for the first 8 months of last year, in 2019.
19.
Yeah.
So it's down 30,000 from the regular green fees payers, which reflects your closures and that. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. There's on the expenditure side of is it possible for you to detail in some future report how you spent this money over the last 2 years? I know you mentioned at the meeting that you purchased a grinder and a mower.
Well, we bought in 2019 with a report that Emma sent to you, showed the $117,000 of what was spent in 2019. I can get the exact list of equipment from our superintendents.
But you mentioned a couple items yesterday, big items.
Yeah, they're big items. I mean, last year, one of the mowers we bought last year in 2019 was a $49,000 mower. So yeah, we spent some big money last year too. The two items I mentioned yesterday, one is a wide area rough mower for Auburn Hills, which would retail for about $57,000, and it's got about 589 hours on it. We're purchasing that for $30,000. And we've got our grinder that, if you've ever been in the maintenance building at Auburn Hills, it's on the north wall. It's a room about the size of my office that has this grinder in there that all the superintendents bring their reels and cutting units out there and use that machine to when they get them ready in the middle of the winter for the next season. And starting in this November, that'll be being used every day through probably the end of February by the superintendents to get all their reel mowers sharpened and ready for the season. And then the minor maintenance that they need to do on them during the mowing season, then they do that at their facilities. And that is a big piece of equipment. It is it saves these guys a lot, because when you start picking up those cutting units that weigh 150 pounds a piece to set them manually into a grinder, which we do have at each one of the golf courses, and to do that manually, then this actually vacuums and picks up all the grindings as well and keeps everything safe environment. So it's about $47,000. The one we had that quit running, we've had it since Auburn Hills opened. They bought it in 1999, I believe. So it lasted 21 years before it quit working because the motherboard went out in it and it couldn't be replaced.
Well, that big one was down. How did you deal with the grinding needs and how long was it out of service?
It went out after they finished, in the spring when it went out. So we've been looking at getting prices and making sure we get everything on there that these guys were looking for. And so, as I said, we do the main grinding in the winter, and then they've got some backlapping machines and some small grinding units that they can use at their shops if they get dings and things in the reels. But the main servicing takes place in the winter time.
Okay, let me turn to the big numbers. I don't understand, and it's just my own ignorance of the process probably. In the budget, published budget, it shows the revenue projected revenue for 2020 was going to be 3,915,541. And that projected a deficit of 110,000. That's before all COVID hit, of course, so you add that on top. But you're starting with a number projected revenue of 3.9 million. You show in your projections that you'll end up with 3.4 million at the end of 2020. That's a big difference. That's a difference of 600,000. And yet you're saying we're going to have a net gain of 61,000. These numbers don't add up, and it's maybe my misunderstanding of it.
So what does it show our expenses to be for the 2020, their estimated expenses?
No, I'm just talking your revenue. There's nothing about expenses. The revenue projected in the budget is 3.9 million. The revenue that you're projecting in this most recent report is 3.4 million.
Correct.
And in the email, it said that means, or in your report, you're saying it shows that means we'll have a net gain of 60,000. I don't understand where the numbers changed.
You have to take the expenses off.
No, we're just talking revenue. It says the year-to-date revenue is down 7% from August of 2019.
Okay.
It doesn't add up. That's your total revenue for 2019 was 4.8 million. That's what you projected. So there's a discrepancy here of some significance that you're. You understand?
So you're talking about 2019 or 2020?
Your rounds revenue summary shows 2019 total division revenue 4,085,000. And the budget, the adopted budget, it shows revenue for 19 was 3.9 million. In the 2020 budget, you showed a projected revenue of 3.9 million, 2021, 3.8 million. Sorry about
the 2020 projected budget would have been put together a year ago in 2019. The adjusted numbers that I'm showing you on the year-end projections that we sent out to you just before this meeting, we're projecting that our revenue is going to be 3.4 million and some change. So yes, that would be down from what was budgeted, but that's the loss in revenue from being closed.
Yeah, but your revenue you showed for 2019 is 4.08 million. You're showing a revenue of 3.4 million. That's 600,000 less. And yet in the report it says you're ending up 60,000 ahead.
I'm talking about 2020, the rounds report that you received in the email.
Yeah.
That I talked about yesterday in the park board meeting. Our revenue at the end of August. This isn't what's been projected and budgeted, because what as actual versus what's budgeted are completely two different things. Our revenue at the end of August was $2,518,072. The projections that we sent out to you just a little while ago, if you look at the 8-month revenue on the revenue and expenditure side, it shows a beginning revenue for 8 months of $2,518,072. What we did in putting the projections together after the COVID with our budget analyst, we looked at if we were to do the same amount of revenue in June, July, August, September, October, November, and December, and match those expenses, where would we be? That was his adjustments that we put into place. We have exceeded those numbers in revenue, so we've done better. But when I put in what we projected based on 2019's revenue, which is what he and I had worked with for September, October, November, and December of 19, you put in the revenues there, you can end up with a $3.419 million in revenue. Now, that would be the total revenue, okay? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get all that. I get you're saying the golf division is going to generate at the end of the year $3.4 million.
Correct.
What I'm saying is that's 600,000 less than you reported making in 2019. And somehow you're showing that you're ahead. Well,
Dale, you're not Dale. It's the expenses. They've cut the expenses, the 600,000. So the expense number of 3.3 million is far less than the expenses that they had projected. So when you take the projected expenses and subtract that from the projected revenues, that's when you come up with what he's projecting the net to be.
I get that. I get that there's a revenue and expense relationship, but revenue itself is shown as $3.4 million. In the email, it says year-to-date revenue is down 7% from August 2019, 175,000.
Correct.
According to the Rounds revenue report, you're down 600,000. Are you looking at the Rounds revenue report that you published?
Yeah, it's sitting right here in front of me.
It showed you took in 4.08 million.
That's not what's on my Rounds revenue report.
I'm looking at it right here. This is the one you handed out at that previous meeting at Auburn Hills. It says total division revenue, 4.085 million, which is odd enough because that's actually the exact same number for 2018, which I found curious, but it is what it is.
Was that something that was handed out by our budget?
You handed it out at the meeting. And I don't want to spend all day talking about it. I just there's questions about the accuracy.
Numbers have changed since the end of May.
2019 didn't change. 2019's done.
What does 2019 have to do with 2020?
Dale, I think the rest of us understand the numbers, and I think this is a conversation you probably ought to have out of the meeting because we're taking a lot of time.
This is the core issue, Richard. This is if the numbers aren't accurate. Oh, really? What I understand if the numbers are not accurate, how can you understand how well we're doing? Or
when I think we understand it, and I think you're the one who doesn't.
Okay, Richard, explain to me that difference then, if you understand that.
The difference is just based upon the difference in projections. You have a number of different inputs and projections. What you're looking at is you're trying to compare the projections of the revenue by itself, and you cannot do that. The revenue has changed, 600,000, yes. The projections are projections from here on to the rest of the year. What matters is where we are right now.
Exactly. And in the email, it said year-to-date revenue is down 7% from August 2019 year-to-date revenue.
And what was that year-to-date revenue in 2019?
I know at the end of the year you show 4 million. So if you take your own projections, it's about $1 million. Okay. All right. I'm going to leave it there. But it's insufficient in detail. But I'm not. No, I don't. Richard has no appetite for talking about it. I don't want to talk about it either.
Mr. Ferris has had his hand up, so we will turn it over to him.
Oh, I already interjected. I just think that, we're talking about two different things. You've got the revenue number, 2.5 million, and then the rest of them are projections to get you to 3.4. Over the last 6 months, the golf division has gone on a cost-cutting binge and cut a bunch of costs, takes it down from what would have been 3.9 million down to 3.3 million. So, I think it's, unless I'm missing something, those numbers balance to me, and maybe end up better, because I think September is going to end up higher than last year's September, and the cost cutting is still in place, so the 3.5 is going to, or 350,000 is going to be less. So, I was just trying to interject that I think that Dale was getting the revenue side correct, but the expenses went down as well, and that's how you end up with where you came up.
And I get that. I understand that, Greg, and I understand, but I'm just looking exclusively at the revenue number. The 2019 total revenue for the golf division is 4.8 million. The total revenue for 2020 is 3.4 million. Okay, so at the end of the year, we're going to end up with 600,000 less than 2019, and a similar number less than what was budgeted, which shows us to be a $600,000 deficit. I understand.
Well, you only have a deficit if you have the same exact expenses, though, Dale.
I understand that, and I understand there's been a cut in expenses as well. But when the revenue number you start with is moving that much, explain to me how that number can be identical for 2019 and 2018, Troy. We had the exact same revenue in 2018 as we had in 2019, to the dollar.
You mean the actual revenue or projected budget?
Total division revenue in your rounds revenue summary.
And Mr. Houtman, please feel free to hop in whenever you see fit. You don't have to raise your hand. So
as I made a suggestion yesterday, and I think I talked about this before, Dale, if there's a specific question you have, you could put it in writing. We'll research it. We'll put it together for you. I think it's just a matter that we're looking at different numbers. We're looking at some of these numbers have different meanings and different perceptions. So we'd be happy to sit down with you and go through each one of these, so we don't have to take up the time during the meetings. Or you could send us a question and through an email, and we'll get it answered to you.
Okay.
any further questions on the golf projections moving forward this year?
I had asked about furloughs and the effect of this increased revenue on furloughs. What do you have in mind?
So in regards to the furloughs, it doesn't have any impact on the revenues, but will have an impact on expenses. And that is budgeted to actually do that. We're actually budgeting to have the furloughs, which is unfortunate, something that we hate to do. And by the direction that has been given to us from the city manager and the finance department, we need to do everything we can to balance or come up as close as we can. But with all these really positive revenue numbers that we're looking at, and with our increased reduction of expenses, hopefully that won't have such a hard impact, and maybe we can change that situation. That's my hope.
Mr. Ferris?
Troy, the numbers that you sent us in the email today for projected expenses, they're just based off of last year's numbers, correct?
That's correct. What the 8-month expense is actually what we pulled out of the Munis reports for the first 8 months. So that line item says 8-month expense. That's what our actual expenses were.
Right, but 19 October, September,
those are all
October,
based on
last year's hard numbers.
Expenses. Yep.
And there were no furloughs in September, October, or
all the furloughs were in November and December.
So if you outperform in September, and you've already got some cuts that you instituted that are going to bring down the September costs. Not knowing October, but I can tell you September's number should be good unless something goes crazy in the next 2 weeks, because
Unless we get an early snow, right?
yeah, the golf courses are full right now. So I think September's going to be close to August in its numbers. You shouldn't have, I mean, you're so short-staffed at the golf courses right now that, they can barely take your money. And to be talking about furloughs, I think, is really counterproductive, and I think it's a mistake, and I just want to get that on the record. And I think especially wait till the end of September, look at your numbers, because based on what you have here, you're going to end up with a positive number. And if that's what staff is telling you need to do, or the manager, then you should be getting there anyway. So, and
we totally agree with that. We don't want to furlough the staff. That's the last thing we want to do. And when we do that, it has an impact in regards to quality, has an impact in regards to service. It's just one of those first of 1,000 cuts for death. So that's something that we really don't want to do and don't want to go that direction. However, there's always these unexpected expenses. Troy can share with you an irrigation situation that we have. Last year we had roofing issues and building issues over at one of the other golf courses, and so there's a lot of unexpected expenses that pop up that's not budgeted, and to continue to operate, we need to address those as well. So a budget is great, but we don't always necessarily can follow it to the letter because there's always unexpected situations that occur.
Mr. Goder.
Unexpected expense that Mr. Houghton is referring to is we had our electrical service to the pump house at Sem Golf Course. The line from the transformers to the pump house shorted out right before Labor Day weekend. We got our contracted vendor, electrical service vendor, to come in. They were able to get the temporary service set up so we could at least water greens. And then they came out and worked over the Friday and Saturday of Labor Day weekend to get a temporary service line laid out so that we could actually then be able to start using the irrigation system the right way. I received a phone call from that vendor today because our pump house is not up to code. In order to upgrade that electrical service to what it needs to be, we're going to have to do some work in our pump house, and they're working up a cost estimate for us. Hopefully it doesn't exceed $20,000.
Mr. Goder. I think you're on mute again.
Sorry. With these numbers, is it the case that the city council will not have to bring any additional funds to balance the 2020 budget?
That's what we're hoping for, yes, sir.
That would be the hope, yes.
So if those numbers, as you've got them projected, hold true, you've covered that, what was a $500,000 deficit a couple of months ago, that's all now balanced, and there's no need for a tax or a general fund subsidy to get through the year.
There's no guarantee what's going to happen from now to the end of the year, but that would be our hope.
Given if those numbers hold true, I understand, like Ms. Ferris said, things can happen and those rounds don't show up, but if you get that revenue number as they are now, you balanced your budget and there's no need for a general fund subsidy.
That would be the hope, as long as we don't have any more expenses or any other expected repairs.
Okay.
Mr. Ferris, feel free to hop in.
Troy Hendricks, the December numbers, 66,000. We've greatly increased the number of passes over last year, haven't we? From December last year to December this year.
You mean of the memberships?
Yes. I
Yes,
keep calling them passes or membership. So that
That's okay.
number, that's 66,000, just on the membership numbers alone, if I'm just doing a rough calculation in my head, it ought to be 20 to 30,000 more than that, just based on the membership numbers, wouldn't it?
yes. Based on, we're now through the transition year.
Right.
You know, when we took this, we talked about this in the park board meeting. We talked about this in the golf advisory committee meetings, and when we went to council, we said that the first year, this switchover would be a 2-year process. The first year, once we started selling them, would be a transition year, and then the next year would be the year to see exactly what we would do.
And that's August.
But we anticipated at the time that we'd generate between $200,000 and $220,000 more in revenue. Based on what we charged in the month of September for our reoccurring fees for the memberships, that was around $77,000. So if you take that times 12 months, that's $927,000. That's up about $300,000 from what we brought in revenue from the sales of the passes in 2018, and then their copay greens fees that they paid in 2018. So we will have accomplished what we talked about when we put this plan together. Is that your question?
So, so you're saying in September, the passes only generated $77,000?
For the month, yes. But
Really?
that goes on every month for 12 months.
Right, I understand that, but it just seems like you have over 1,000 passes.
But they're at a varying price range too.
Well, I understand, but it would seem like it must. Okay, I understand it. Thank you.
Mr. Goder. And mute again.
Sorry, it's my loud schnauzer. I got to keep him quiet. You said you have about 1,000 memberships in play right now, just to clarify what Craig was saying.
1,041, I believe, is what we talked about yesterday. Let me look again.
So that means there is a set amount monthly is coming from, because those are monthly deductions people submit. So what is the monthly total that comes from those 1,000 members? They're in place right now, so every month you have the same amount of money coming from those 1,000 memberships, right?
Yes. I mean, if we go back and look at what we did.
So what is that number?
Go ahead.
What is that number?
Well, like I just said, $77,000.
77,000?
Yeah.
So the projected, when Mr. Ferris is talking about the projected revenues, that really doesn't fit. That's a constant. There's not a variable in revenue for October, November, December. Only if you were to sell more memberships, that would raise that amount. But that month, in October, November, December, that you're going to have $70,000 from the current membership, right?
Yes, sir.
That's locked in. So Craig, you understand what I'm saying? That there's not only way that number increases is if they sell additional memberships between now and then, which is probably the slow time of the year.
Well, I was just saying in December, they're showing a total revenue of 66,000.
Okay.
Well, I know they're going to have at least 77,000 in revenue that month. And then there's going to be some people playing golf unless the weather's horrible. So that number of 66,000 is too low of a projected number. So that's going to increase your net profit is what my point was.
Mr. Ferris, the way we put that together was the way the budget office put together when we talked about this in June at Auburn Hills, and Sean was there, and he was talking about he was using the revenue and expense numbers for the months of June through the end of December. Those were his projections, so I did it in the same manner in which he did.
No, I don't disagree with you. I was just pointing out that your 61,000 in net income will likely be higher based on you're going to have more revenue for sure in December, probably in November, and quite possibly in October, because you're collecting more than you would have collected the year before in past revenue if nobody played around the golf, and that based on that increase, you add that to that 61,000, you could well exceed 100,000, which my point is, really need to start thinking more about those revenue numbers and not, I'm really concerned about the furloughs. And so I'm thinking that you're ending up with more money than you're projecting because your projections are arbitrarily low because you haven't increased the revenue numbers based on the added memberships.
Okay, I understand.
Which
Thank
are
you.
guaranteed money.
Right.
If nobody plays around the golf in December, you're going to have more revenue than 66,000. And we know there's going to be some green fees paid that month.
Correct.
My system does not allow me to raise my hand. At some point, I'd like to talk about, in a previous meeting, we passed an increase in cart fees from $12.50 to $15, but we made it contingent on the city reducing our burden, and that seems to be dead in the water. I would like to have us consider the fact of dropping that condition because number one, we need to have a little bit more money to set aside to take care of the carts because we're getting a lot of wear. And number two is that would increase our revenue numbers. And I think it's reasonable, and I don't think we're going to get a lot of pushback. And it doesn't make a lot of sense to me to put a condition on that literally causes it to be dead in the water at this point.
Mr. Ferris.
Richard, I don't mind talking about cart fee. I think 15 is too high. I do, as I've said before, I think you should have a, call it COVID surcharge or whatever you want, where, maybe you charge $28 for a cart, but if they ride together, you give them a discount back to $25 to get rid of, the cost of the extra gas and the wear and tear on the vehicle. And hey, if I want to ride by myself, then, I'm paying extra couple bucks. But if I don't mind riding with my brother, then I don't pay that.
I still think we have the restrictions for COVID.
Well, I mean, you don't have to have a restriction. You can just have a benefit if you ride.
They can't ride together unless they are coming from the same family.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm saying though, you're basically raising the cart fees. That's what you wanted to do, Richard. But in the meantime, until such time as this goes away, you eliminate that for people that ride together because you're putting wear and tear on the carts. I mean,
yeah, but I at this point, I think that if you literally double the fees, because again, they cannot ride together unless they come from the same household, as I understand.
No, you're not doubling the fees, Richard. I'm talking about having it be $14 if you ride by yourself and $12.50 basically a person if you're riding with somebody.
Okay, I understand now.
I'm sorry. You're right. The way
that.
I said it, you were right to misinterpret because I said it wrong.
And I could support that.
And even if you don't raise the fees, I think you should be charging an extra $1 for anybody riding alone just to cover the gas.
Mr. Goder.
Dale, you're on mute.
Sorry. Have we given any consideration to a cart membership similar to the green fee membership where you pay a certain amount and you get a benefit because you pay less if you use the cart more? Same philosophy as you use for the green fees?
We did talk about that. I think, Dale, before you were on the committee, I think Richard was kind of in favor of that, and I think some other people were. I'm not sure I ever was, but I don't have a problem visiting it if we want to run some numbers and see what it would cost if somebody wanted to do that. And, it gives you, again, that guaranteed revenue in November, December, January, and February. So there may be some benefit to it.
I hear that regularly from players that they'd like to, perhaps, if that were possible, to have that.
Yeah, you just walk up and say, "I'm here," and give me a cart key. Yeah, I mean, there's certainly some advantage to that, but I just think that staff's going to have to run the numbers and see what that cost would be. It wouldn't be cheap, I wouldn't think, but
I think that this is Troy. In just playing devil's advocate here, when we talked about this in the Golf Advisory Committee meeting, by paying the flat fee for a membership per month, greens fee, and eliminated the greens fee, that's the only thing that we require golfers to pay. They're required to pay a greens fee. They're not required to pay anything for range balls. They're not required to buy anything in the golf shops. They're not required to buy anything in the snack bar. And they're not required to ride a cart. So our cart fleet is based on, at each golf course, is based on that scenario. If you were to introduce a cart pass, yes, we could probably come up with a number to figure out what it would be. But I think what you would run into is not having enough golf carts at your golf courses and not having enough storage capacity to store them. We're already at our limit at McDonald for cart storage capacity. I know that when we went from 60 carts to 72 at Sim, the beauty behind that was that they were not electric anymore, that we could actually park the carts in the basement closer together, but that basement's full. You could probably get a few more in at Auburn Hills. At Tex Consolver, we're actually parking carts behind the building to store carts. They get them up to their 72 carts. So I think you'd run into some capacity just to have enough carts, be able to store them. And then the big kicker there is if everybody comes out and they're cart members, and you run out of carts.
I don't necessarily, this is Richard, I don't necessarily believe that would happen because, again, as Dale said, gives you the income over the winter. And I think that most people would not opt for that. It would be more of a convenience as opposed to a savings for the people who would want to just go in and get a cart key. And I think it would help us in the sale of our memberships, regular memberships, because that is a convenience that I think would appeal to people that we're trying to bring into the fold. Just my opinion.
I would tend to agree with that. I was playing with a buddy on Saturday out at Mac, and that was his main concern was not necessarily having to walk into the clubhouse and say, "Hey, I'm here. Let me go." It was kind of the ease of access. So I guess my question would be, how would we structure that? What would that look like, the cart passes? And then with the cart barn or the cart availability, let's say at Mac, does that project fall under a CIP? Could some of those dollars help fund a new cart barn or a renovation to the existing cart barn?
Well, I'd make a motion that staff would come back to us with some numbers of what that would look like and give us an idea of what that cost would be so that we could consider it. That'd be a motion.
I'll second.
So, okay, I was going to second. That's fine.
And discussion for that. If I'm not sure that you're going to use that many more carts because the most of the people that are using them now are going to use them then anyway. So if you've paid for it, you're going to use it. But I'm never going to pay a cart fee because I only use it once in a while. Where Ron Marnell, who has to ride because of his leg, he probably would, but he rides every time now anyway. So I just don't think that you're going to have a significant difference. And once you get away from this single rider issue, which hopefully in the next 2 or 3 months or over all these COVID questions. So that's why I'm not as concerned about the issue raised by Troy. There may be some other issues, but.
Mr. Hauptman.
So I just wanted to address the capital question that you brought up. And the way the fund is structured right now as an enterprise fund, any kind of capital dollars is supposed to or should come out of the Golf Enterprise Fund, which, if we're breaking even, we're great. If we're losing a little bit of money, that could be possibly happen by the end of the year. Or if we get into the black, that's even better. But either way, one of those situations where in the $100,000 area, when we're talking about capital projects, we're talking about millions of dollars. And that's where we're really kind of weak in, is having that ability to really put in those capital dollars back into the golf course. We were pretty lucky a couple of years ago. We got $1 million to put in new golf carts. So it's never impossible, but the way that I get the feedback from the council and from the city manager is that any of the capital dollars that we would like to explore would have to be coming out of the enterprise fund or some other kind of fund, but not the general fund, and definitely not out of a capital fund. So just to let you know.
Thank you for clarifying that. I think, going back to the cart barns, I don't know if that's going to be a $1 million project, just the barn itself, considering you don't need a whole lot of mechanical work in there and other intricacies. It's pretty much just a cold, dark shell with some electricity running through it. But if we do want to, spend $1 million, we could blanket it into some other projects as well. I see what you're saying about, the capital having to come from the enterprise fund, however, but something to look at. Maybe that's, we could parlay that with Richard's idea of upping the cart fee by $1 or $2.50 or whatever it may be, and funneling that money into a CIP fund. But we've got a motion and a second on the table right now. Is there any further discussion on this topic? See none, and we'll call it. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Were those for favors?
Favor.
Okay.
Favor.
All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
I would like to request a second motion, and that is to come up with the projections to see what a $2 increase in the cart fee would bring. So we have those numbers that if we decide to vote for it. And again, I pulled $2 out of the air. I was originally at $2.50, but if someone else would like to see a different number, I'd be glad to entertain that too.
Troy, do we have to pay sales tax on on golf carts, don't they?
Yes, sales tax is included in that $12.50 that each golfer pays.
Oh, Richard, you might want to just be kind of nice if it was an even number. Instead of paying $12.50 when I go in there, be kind of $7.50 when I get a cart for the back nine. I just assume pay $8.
I would include the numbers I would put together, Greg, would include the sales tax.
Yeah, just make it an even number. Richard, are you okay with that? Making it an even number?
Absolutely.
Instead of
so we're talking about going up to $14.50.
well, no, you'd be going, that wouldn't be an even number. $14.50 is not an even number.
So you're thinking
14's an even number, or 15's an even number, because the individual's paying it. As a
And
general
that's why I
rule.
suggested 14.
Yeah, I think 14's a good number.
Okay, then I amend my motion, instead of $2, I amend the motion to see what kind of revenue we would generate if we went up to $14.
And if you would add to your motion, just so we can look at it, $15 too, Richard, that way you can have
Okay.
something to compare it.
I so amend my motion to include both projection for 14 and for 15.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on this topic? Dale, go ahead.
Would it be possible to have a comparison to our regional competitors like Sand Creek, Winfield, Wellington, Cheney, what they're doing in terms of cart rentals, just so we stay in the same, make sure we're in the same area as they are?
Well, I think the motion would just see what kind of revenue. Then we can decide based upon analysis of what other people are doing, whether or not we want to. This is just to see a projection.
That's
Well,
fine.
Richard, wouldn't it be a good idea to have it at the same time while we're looking at it? I mean, it wouldn't take that much effort to make it.
We will. That's what we've always done when we've had greens fee increases, as well as also explained what's going on around us. So that'll be included.
Okay. Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay. Is there anything else that we want to get off our chest? Dale, go ahead.
We talked briefly at the park board meeting yesterday about expanding the membership of this group. I'm not sure where all this ended up. My understanding was from Mr. Houtman's comments that the manager decided not to take that idea to the council. I forget whether we had actually formally recommended that or we just asked it to be a consideration. I raised that point in the context of what's going on with the possible realignment of the management of our courses and the role the GAC might play in that. Is there an interest in, and we only have 4 members here right now, and we're not going to have many more. Apparently the cart board action yesterday was to only fill the empty 2 spots. I think Tom West is the only one absent today, so I'm interested in whether this current GAC membership is interested in participating in that discussion.
Troy,
So this
go
is
ahead.
Troy. I just want to clarify that it's my understanding that the city manager did speak to most of the council members, as he does on a daily basis, and found out that there was not an interest for that. So I just wanted to clarify that I did share that with the city manager, and he moved forward to speaking to the council members, and that was the response that he got. If we want to try a different direction, if we want to put something that's definitely in writing or something that you want to go back and speak to each one of your appointed council members, I think that's another great idea as well. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Well, Troy, we're not appointed by the council members. We're appointed by the park board members. So why doesn't the park board members appoint the 2 vacancies, and at least then we'll have, 7 members and, closer to
That's what was suggested yesterday, but the idea of actually expanding the group is something that has to go through the council.
Yeah,
They're the ones that created the GAC.
I understand now. Well, at least let's get filled for the next meeting.
Oh, I agree. That's one thing I suggested yesterday.
Well, I refresh my memory, that suggestion of expanding it came from this group or from the park board? I haven't looked back in the minutes, I don't recall.
I think I made that motion to at least look at it in a park board meeting.
I don't recall ever hearing of it in
Yep.
a meeting.
We talked about it at the last GAC meeting, I think, Greg, if I'm not.
Well, I might have missed. I left early, Dale. You might have got it after I left.
When I scanned through the minutes, I couldn't find a reference, so I wasn't sure. I'm a little concerned if there was a formal recommendation that it didn't have its day in court. It would not be a violation of the Open Meetings Act for the manager to survey the council and get an action without going into a public meeting. So I don't think that's really what happened. Anyway, I guess we're waiting for the full complement of the 7 to be appointed, and then we'll bring it up again after that point. The problem with that is this other development is moving forward. If the GAC is going to have a role in it, we need to be fully appointed, and we need to decide what that role is. We are the public's interest in this process.
I would assume and I would hope that if there's anything going to happen, that it would come to this board and we would discuss it openly. I can't imagine that we wouldn't, but.
Well, but as you as I have talked, that hasn't always
been
been
surprised before.
Yeah, well, that's not been the case before, and this group has not had a real, active role in much of anything in the past. That's okay. I guess we're waiting for the full 7. That'll be the next month's meeting of the park board. When is the next GAC meeting?
Do we have that scheduled yet? Usually we schedule it after this meeting, pretty much immediately, and get it on the books for the next month. Is that correct? I could be wrong.
I'll have to look, Eddie, because we sent out a schedule in early July to everybody. So it was emailed out to everybody. I think Rowan's looking at it right now.
Okay. Thanks, Rowan. Corey?
Yeah. Is there any way we can back these up till 4 o'clock? I mean, like I taught a class until 3:10 and then got here as quick as I could. I mean, thank goodness it was a Teams meeting, because I just went from one Teams meeting to another Teams meeting. But 3 o'clock is, I'll never make a 3 o'clock time on time.
We used to do 4, and I'd prefer 4, because if I want to play golf, it makes it a lot easier.
Is that something we can do? That's obviously not covered under any of the city council bylaws, since it was previously at 4.
No, we can do that.
Okay, that would help me out a ton, guys. I'd really appreciate it.
Does that work for everybody else? 4 o'clock?
Works for me.
Okay, let's go ahead and plan on that. If you don't mind, Rowan, making a note for the next meeting. I already forgot what date that was, but
October 27th.
if we could amend that, and I don't think you need to send it out again in the calendar, but just update that if you would. Thank you. Okay, guys. Anything else? Dale?
I'd like to suggest for the next meeting that we, perhaps in the interim, in deference to Mr. Hobbins' suggestion about advance notice, that there be some kind of analysis done. Our revenues dropped $1 million in 4 years. And we've added marketing positions, we've added expense there, and I'd just like to see an analysis of why that revenue has dropped so precipitously in that short time. If that trend continues, we're obviously in big trouble, but I don't know what the factors are in that. I would hope that internally there is the capacity to analyze where the revenue came from in 2017 and why it's $1 million short this year, and it's been in a steady decline. I think that'd be useful for our long-term planning.
Troy, do you have a quick answer to that, or do we want to revisit next meeting?
Which Troy?
Either.
So I'll take this question, and I think a big part of it is simply because we've had less golfers, and that was something that was analyzed why we closed CLAP, and that was part of the whole evaluation of the declining revenues that we were seeing in the past 2, 3, 4 years. But I think we can scrub those numbers and come up with a newer, more accurate, more current evaluation, and we can do that.
I'd like to think we can get back to 4.4 million. We did it once, and I know times are tough, but we went through a recession, came through a lot of that. Anyway, it's long term, so that's fine.
All right.
Troy Hendricks, as you're going through your projections, if you wouldn't mind revising them to include the fact that we know there's going to be additional revenue based on the past system, so that it's a little bit more accurate when you look at it.
Okay. I was just going based on the same manner that our budget analyst did.
Yeah, I understand why you did it. I just think we might as well get a little more accurate, and since we know those numbers, we might as well use them.
Okay. Anything else?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. This meeting is adjourned. Thanks, guys, and we'll see you next meeting, if not before.
Thank you.